You have no idea what the Kronos Empire is capable of.
Hello everyone, welcome to PST channel, game story, movie style for your busy days. We're back for the epic conclusion of Another Eden's episode 3, Into the Hollow. This is it, volumes 3 and 4. The Kronos Emperor, AI Madoka, the Winged Beast, it all comes to a head now. Let's dive straight into the finale of Aldo's incredible journey. Within the Blood Ring, Aldo finally finds the progenitor of the Red Stones. The ring itself is an extraterrestrial life form. A battle with Grand Hades ensues, and both guilty Hades and an Imperial warship are thrown into the sea. Suddenly, the bodies of Aldo and the others, including Sebastia, began to glow red. Aldo's group. Sebastia, guilty Hades, Grand Hades, and the Imperial Riftbreaker that had previously clashed with guilty Hades were all transported by a mysterious red light to a strange, unknown location. While Aldo and his companions were still reeling from this sudden turn of events, Sebastia explained that they were in the Crystal Age. It appeared that both Aldo's group and she to have been summoned to the era of the rocks. Before she could elaborate further, enigmatic figures appeared. Sebastia immediately recognized them as the Runavale Republic's Council of Gear. From among them, a young woman stepped forward and introduced herself as Amelie Bloom, Speaker of Council. She declared that Aldo's group had been summoned because they have been deemed a threat to the law and order of the Hollow Time Layer. This was because, even if it was not intention of Aldo's group, there is no question that actions of Aldo's group awakened the Tree of Time and the Winged Beast. The council sentenced Aldo and his companions to be cryogenically frozen, disregarding any of their protests. But Aldo and his friends, especially Aldo's cursed sword, Ogre Rankarem, were not about to be frozen without a fight. Ogre Rankarem unleashed its power, freeing guilty Hades from its restraints. However, this escalated the situation 100-fold. Just as a clash was about to erupt, a young man appeared, intervening to prevent the conflict. His name was Commonsarg. He requested custody of Aldo's group from the council. He claimed they must ascertain the secret of the Golden Sword as soon as possible, and he believed these people might just hold the key. Initially, the panel members seemed unwilling to grant his request and were visibly displeased. However, Amelie surprisingly agreed, and though the panel members were shocked and somewhat disagreed with her decision, when she affirmed her stance as a descendant of the Flower Guard, that she had decided to entrust the prisoners to Commonsarg of the Sword Guard, the panel members acquiesced. S for Aldo's group, although displeased at having decisions made for them, They conceded as it seemed the best option for now. Sebastia, being a high-ranking Imperial official, will be staying with Amelie. After the meeting concluded, Kommensarg formally introduced himself to Aldo's group as Kommensarg Engold. He described himself as just a local tracker, a hunter basically. He had no connection to the council. The reason Amelie trusted his judgment was because they had known each other for a long time. His reason for helping Aldo's group was because he was trying to find out the truth behind the legend of the Golden Sword, and he thought Aldo's group can help him. Kommensarg wanted Aldo's group to accompany him to the Glass Mausoleum. He would explain the details later. For now, he wanted them to rest, relax, and learn about their world. The Crystal Capital Jasmine. He explained that those flowers dancing through the air were called fairy blossoms. Kommensarg elaborated. They call them that because of the way they ferry themselves across vast distances. There's an old story that the life force of our people resides within them. Their smiles and tears become the flowers that soar the skies of our transient world. As Aldo's group explored Jasmine, they discovered that, according to the local calendar, the current year was 1100 AD, corresponding to the same period as Amy's time. So, in 20,000 BC, this world was home to the Mu, who by 300 AD had been replaced by the Mechs. And 1100 AD is the era of the Rocks, who had evolved from the Mechs. Everything began 20,000 years ago, the day the red meteor fell to this world. The once prosperous MU culture fell to ruin shortly after, though we don't know for sure if the meteor was the direct cause. The meteor brought the light spark to this world, allowing new forms of life to flourish, like mechs and other mineral life forms. And over time, the mechs continued to evolve until ultimately becoming rocks. The mechs themselves evolved from the original mineral life forms, creating mechanical bodies for their hearts. Over time, they absorbed the plants of this world, rendering their mechanical bodies unnecessary. And the end result was the rocks. Kommensarg was a trustworthy figure to the locals, because he's basically a hero after saving the citizens of Jasmine from the Butcher. However, Aldo's group couldn't learn many details about the Butcher, as the townspeople were reluctant to speak about it. It also appeared that the council was searching for the Golden Sword and was not on good terms with the Empire. Overall, there was still much that Aldo's group didn't know about this place. They decided to accompany Kommensarg to the Glass Mausoleum to learn more. Kommensarg explained to Aldo's group that finding the Golden Sword was his responsibility as a sword guard, the bloodline destined to wield the Golden Sword. That would include his older brother, his older sister, and himself, or at least it would have before the Butcher killings. It all started with a mass murder that occurred a few years ago. There's a prophecy passed down by their people. As worlds bloom like flowers at dawn, so too do they wither. Offer your petals unto the blade of subjugation, so that the Golden Sword might shine again. The killer was trying to make it a reality. The petals were a metaphor for the lives of the rocks. In the end, Kommensarg was the one who apprehended the accused. After discussing it with Amelie, they decided to sentence her to cryogenic disposal. But the situation has changed, and in light of the Tree of Time's reawakening, he feels he have no choice but to wake her back up, because she's the key to finding out the truth about the Golden Sword. In other words, Kommensarg intended to awaken her to inquire about information regarding the Golden Sword, despite the inherent danger. He didn't intend to force Aldo's group to accompany him. If necessary, he would meet her alone, and she was cryogenically frozen right here. However, when Kommensarg awakened her, the one some people call her the Jasmine Butcher, Kommensarg further revealed she is Jill Funny Engold, his only older sister. Yet, upon awakening, Gilfunny was furious. She summoned a crystalline life form born from magical energy, the glass dragon, and declared she had nothing to discuss with Commonsarg. She then fled. Commonsarg pursued Gilfunny, while Aldo's group engaged the glass dragon. After defeating it, Commonsarg returned, informing them that she had escaped, but he knew her destination, Illusioland. It was a theme park that ended up being the site of one of the crimes. It's on the continent floating west of Jasmine. Aldo's group decided to follow her there with Commonsarg. Aldo and Commonsarg finally found Gilfunny. However, she denied killing anyone. Initially, Aldo's group was shocked by her claim, but Commonsarg calmly affirmed it was true. He then confessed, without remorse, that he was the real killer and had used Gilfunny as his scapegoat. His motive for the murders was, as he had previously stated, he believed it would bring forth the Golden Sword. But the Golden Sword never appeared. This time, he intended to use his sister's blood, thinking, maybe the blade thirsts for their blood, the blood of the Sword Guard. His reason for helping Aldo's group? It's because Aldo's group was already connected to the Tree of Time and the Winged Beast, making them perfect scapegoats for Gilfunny's murder to awaken the Golden Sword. After all, Amelie and the Council would never believe he could kill his own sister. Consumed by his obsession with finding the Golden Sword, Commonsarg invited his sister to settle things at a place of shared childhood memories. Aldo's group followed to help Gilfunny. Aldo and Gilfunny then battled Commonsarg, the killer. Naturally, Commonsarg was no match for Aldo and Gilfunny. He died in Gilfunny's arms. After Commonsarg's demise and learning of Aldo's group's current situation, Gilfunny decided to join their journey, viewing the quest for the Golden Sword as her family's duty. However, the Council suddenly appeared, mistakenly believing Gilfunny had killed her own brother. Amelie was enraged and refused to listen to any explanations from Aldo's group. Aldo had Kamlanaj summon Guilty Hades to escape, but before they could get far, Guilty Hades was struck by Amelie's curse magic, which rendered its target completely powerless, causing Guilty Hades to fall into the sea. Guilty Hades sank to the ocean floor, and there, Aldo's group encountered the one who had become their ally 800 years prior, the Sleeping Pearl. Aldo's group was rescued by the Sleeping Pearl. With her guidance, they were able to get Guilty Hades operational again. However, once Guilty Hades was reactivated, the Tree of Time began to call out to Guilty Hades for an unknown reason. Aldo's group therefore went to investigate the Tree of Time of 1100 AD. Upon their arrival, the Tree of Time, Guilty Hades, and There's Something Close were all calling to each other. And the Tree of Time is floating atop the ocean. Gilfunny immediately knew what was calling to the Tree of Time and Guilty Hades. she advised Aldo's group that they need to go to the Sword Hall and meet with Blade Lord Galdmagid right away, because that was his family estate. It has to be the place that the Tree of Time and Guilty Hades are calling to. Galdmagid was her older brother. As head of the Sword Guard, her brother must know something about the Golden Sword. However, when Aldo's group went to meet Galdmagid at the Sword Hall, as Gilfunny suggested, they found that Galdmagid had cast away his humanity entirely and have been reborn as the successor of the one true sword, the living blade of Subjugation. He, no different from Common Sarg, desired Gilfunny's petals so that the golden sword might shine again. Galdmagid declared that he will become the golden sword and shatter the goddess of Time's cross. The seal on the hollow will be destroyed, and he will be its saviour. He also proclaimed, "By decree of fate shall Sword Guard fall, a bloody war of lord, saint, and fiend to herald the coming of the golden sword." Before the two siblings clashed in a fateful duel, during the battle, Galdmagid struck Aldo, sending him flying. He then absorbed an immense amount of power from the fairy blossoms, which, in truth, do carry the rock's life force within them. The prophecy, "Offer your petals," was never a metaphor for the lives of the rock. It was referring to the energy housed in the fairy blossoms. Galdmagid's body began becoming the golden sword, and he launched a finishing blow at Gilfunny. However, Fine threw herself in front of Gilfunny, and her body disintegrated before everyone's eyes. Ogre Rancorum appeared before Fine, who was hovering between life and death as time stood still. The cursed sword offered a deal. It was willing to share some of my life force with Fine in exchange for her to relinquish a portion of your Geoprisma power to it. Initially, Fane was hesitant to make a pact with a character who had betrayed Aldo in every part, at least once per part. But Ogre Rancorum tempted her, using Aldo as leverage, saying that if she died, he'll blame himself forever for not being able to protect her. Fine pondered for a moment before her body began to glow, signalling her answer. Fine, having received some of Ogre Rancorum's power, reappeared before everyone, much to their astonishment, including Galdmagid's. This made him understand that fate had chosen the Blade Saint Gilfunny, not him. But he refused to give up. However, just as Gilna and Minalka were about to retrieve the Golden Sword, Grand Hades, piloted by Sebastia, who had just escaped from the council, appeared to seize the Golden Sword. But before she could, Amelie materialized, declaring she would not let that sword fall into Imperial hands. Ogre Rancorum, seeing that the two were having trouble reaching an agreement, seized the opportune moment and absorbed the Golden Sword. Suddenly, the Golden Sword, the Winged Beast, and the Tree of Time are all resonating with one another. and something appeared. It was the Hollow Lake, the nothingness that was sealed in this world at the beginning of time, the realm of Hollow God Niilus. It awoke in response to the Tree of Time's call for the Dark Dawn. It's come to liberate the Hollow Time Layer. Aldo's group therefore decided to enter the Hollow Lake to defeat Niilus just like they did Kronos Menace and Chaos. Aldo's group managed to defeat Niilus, like they did Kronos Menace and Chaos. However, everything was part of Ogre Rancorum's plan. It had waited for Niilus to be overthrown because, if Niilus remained, everything, including itself, would be consumed. guilty Hades, having absorbed what's left of Niilus's power, became a reddened, guilty Hades, a sky torn asunder by the golden sword, and the ever-encroaching imperial fleet. Ogre Rancorum's plans turn things on their heads. A reddened, guilty Hades, a sky torn asunder by the golden sword, and the ever-encroaching imperial fleet, as the story rapidly escalated towards its climax. A huge vortex opened, and everything was sucked into it. Aldo awoke in a strangely altered moonlight forest. He found himself alone, with only Ogre Rancorum now sheathed. Though confused by the situation, he didn't hesitate and immediately set out to find his friends. Upon exiting Moonlight Forest into Noru Upland, he discovered that not only had the forest changed, but the entire area was now littered with mysterious blue boxes. This confusion amplified Aldo's anxiety for everyone. Aldo continued his journey until he reached Unigan. Suddenly, the clamour of people reached his ears. Following the sound, he found Annabelle and Deirdre being berated by townspeople about the bizarre occurrences. Fortunately, King Miglance appeared. With his persuasive words, he managed to calm the populace, who then obediently dispersed. When the king met Aldo and learned he was trying to rectify the situation, he was immediately reassured. King Miglance would remain in Unigan to comfort the people. Not long after, Aldo reunited with Faina, Ashtir, and Korobo in Unigan. Ashtir believed this was not their world. Her theory was that when the hollow time layer was liberated, some kind of interruption occurred, creating a vortex that pulled everything in, including Unigan. To find more clues, the four decided to investigate Noru Upland. But as they arrived at Noru Upland, before they could even begin their investigation, an Imperial warship crashed to the ground. Aldo's group decided to investigate the ship, hoping to find clues related to the current situation. Investigating the wreckage, Aldo's group encountered a giant monster. Ashtir surmised it was an unknown types of life native to the vortex, capable of mutating and mimicking the forms of machinery. Currently, it had Grand Hades attached to its side. Inside Grand Hades, Sebastia was trapped in the cockpit. The emergency eject button was malfunctioning, preventing her escape. They decided to fight the giant monster to rescue Sebastia. After rescuing Sebastia, the monster flew off, attempting to escape Aldo's group. But Synth Hydra having noticed Aldo's group being pulled into the vortex, appeared and rammed it with full force, shattering the monster's body into pieces. However, the fragments of the giant monster were still alive. One piece transformed into a mysterious girl. She stated that she did not come out of that thing, but rather she was that thing. Aldo's group killed her, but she found them very interesting. Thus, she regenerated and came to life again, adding, if she want to know her murderers, she should look like them too. She introduced herself as Nilia. Nilia wanted to accompany Aldo's group. Naturally, Aldo allowed it, as long as she don't turn into a giant monster and attack them again. Afterward, Aldo's group, along with Sebastia and Nilia, returned to Unigan to discuss what had happened. Sebastia recounted that she, like the others, had been pulled into the vortex. She had been separated from the Imperial fleet and had encountered a ship being consumed by alien life forms. She intervened and was subsequently attacked by them. Nilia added, and that's when she ate Sebastia. Furthermore, Sebastia theorized about the current situation. This world we're in is, to put it in layman's terms, a kind of space-time melting pot. A time layer between, so to speak. Here, in what she's been calling the Adax dimension, both time layers exist. But that existence is far from harmonious. In fact, they are slowly devouring each other. But one could only assume it was because the hollow layer wasn't fully released. Perhaps the goddess of time intervened. At any rate, this time-devouring domain was born from that incident, taking places and whole eras from their worlds with it. This assumption also aligned with Ashtia's theory. Furthermore, Sebastia called the monsters that attacked her Edaxian. The creatures here share similar characteristics. They see things from outside the domain and mimic them. And this domain is overflowing with Nullans, and their numbers seem to be increasing by the moment. If they don't stop their spread, then the whole domain will be devoured. Everything will be destroyed. Naturally, Aldo did not want that to happen. Though he still didn't know how to resolve these situations, he decided to set out and find his missing friends. The current goal for Aldo's group was not just about the Empire, but also about stopping the collapse of the time layer. Ashtia's theory was that everyone had been sent to a place with which they had a strong connection, like Aldo being sent to Moonlight Forest. This might have been a side effect of being in this domain, or perhaps external help from the goddess of time. For this reason, Aldo set out to places his friends were strongly connected to, scattered throughout the Edax dimension, by riding Synth Hydra to each location. This journey to find his friends was like retracing Aldo's previous adventures. Gildner and Altina were sent to Beast King's castle. Kamlanage was sent to the Satellite Stadium, the venue of his concerts. Rika was sent to Elzion Airport. Helena was sent to the Industrial Ruins Depths. Amy was sent to the Gamma District. Cyrus was sent to Godoro, his hometown. And Minalka, Valette, and Gilfunny were sent to a megapolis. While Aldo was searching for his friends, Sebastia observed that the concentration of Nullans would cause space-time to destroy itself. Those very Nullans seemed to be coming from the Tree of Time itself. They just need to go into the Tree of Time and stop the hollow clock. Aldo's group therefore decided to go to the Tree of Time to stop the hollow clock. However, Synth Hydra could not get close to it because the area around the Tree of Time was surrounded by the energy field that was very strong. If Hydra gets close to it, he will be torn to pieces. They therefore decided to seek help from Emperor Kronos, since his ships are equipped with Nullan shields, and should be able to make it through. Emperor Kronos willingly offered his assistance. Initially, Emperor Kronos ordered his fleet to fire on the Tree of Time, but the Tree of Time's defense systems were too powerful for the warships. The only way was to stop it from within. Thus, Emperor Kronos had no choice but to transport Aldo to the Tree of Time to stop the hollow clock. And Aldo's group successfully managed to shut it down. However, suddenly, the giant Edaxian that had attacked Sebastia and absorbed Grand Hades reappeared before Aldo's group in a new form, having completely assimilated Grand Hades. It was now called Zeno Hades. It attacked Aldo's group, but Nilia threw herself in front of the attack to shield them. This created an opening for Kamlanij to pilot guilty Hades and fight Zeno Hades. But then, Emperor Kronos ordered all battleships to fire missiles at the Tree of Time. Now that he could resolve the Edax domain issue, he could resume his original plan. And now, he had already found the entry point to the Ocean of Time. He also declared that Nilia is too dangerous to be kept alive. Aldo's group regained consciousness at the bottom of the Edaxian domain after Kronos sank the Tree of Time. As for Nilia, who had tried to protect Aldo's group, she was safe, and nary a scratch on her. Afterward, Aldo's group decided to find a way out of the bottom of the Edaxian domain. However, since the Nuln levels in this place were too high for safety, Aldo's group jumped into guilty Hades. While searching for an exit, they encountered Zeno Hades again and engaged it in a decisive battle. Although guilty Hades seemed to have the upper hand in the fight and managed to defeat Zeno Hades, it used its last ounce of strength to attack guilty Hades, pulling Aldo's group down into an abyss. But fortunately, an Imperial warship swooped in and pulled guilty Hades out of the abyss just in the nick of time. The one who came to their rescue was none other than Sebastia. She had come to help Aldo's group because she still felt indebted to them and wouldn't let them die before she had repaid that debt. At last, Aldo's group successfully escaped the Edax abyss. The reason Sebastia knew their location and could rescue them in time was because she had tracked the signal from a transmitter synth Hydra had attached to Aldo's group. Furthermore, Sebastia informed them that Kronos ordered all battleships to the Zeno domain and warned Aldo's group that the synth Hydra is nowhere near enough to take on the might of the Imperial fleet before bidding them farewell. Despite this warning, Aldo's group would not stand idly by and let Kronos do as he pleased. They therefore followed Emperor Kronos to the Zeno domain to stop him, even though they didn't know what he was doing there. When Kronos saw Aldo's group, he immediately understood that they had survived the Edax abyss, with some unexpected help, but he was not surprised. He then told them they are too late for plan on restarting the Zeno domain and opening the gates of time to rule all of space-time. Releasing the hollow time layer was simply a means to an end. Once open the gates, he will send fleet up the river of time and into the ocean of time, where he will settle things with the goddess of time once and for all. Although Aldo's group didn't understand why this Kronos was doing this, they had arrived too late to stop his plan. The gates are about to open. Kronos ordered his battleships to enter the River of Time, to where all time begins, to Zurvan. The battleships blasted Synth Hydra, which was trying to obstruct them, out of the sky. Afterward, he declared his victory before Aldo's group before departing. Fine refused to give up. She requested Kamlanaga's cooperation. Using her geopower and his resonance ability, to summon synth hydras from multiple dimensions. Aldo's synth hydra pursued Kronos' ship as they were heading for Zurvan, the ocean of time. Meanwhile, synth hydras from multiple dimensions helped to delay the fleet. However, Kronos managed to reach Zurvan first and encountered Madoka. She recognized this Kronos as the leader of the Kronos Empire, from the hollow time layer. Kronos ordered the goddess of time kneel and surrender the ocean of time to him. If she refused, she and Eden will spend eternity locked away in the prison of time. But Aldo's group arrived just in time. At last, Aldo and Fine were reunited with Madoka and Eden. However, Kronos interrupted their family moment. Kronos then returned to his warship and prepared to order an attack on Aldo's group and Madoka. But then, something happened that no one, neither Emperor Kronos nor Aldo's group, could have anticipated. Nilia, with assistance from Ogre Rancorum, merged with Madoka and Eden, becoming Mimik. She then destroyed the Imperial flagship in one blow, and the next to be destroyed would be Aldo's group. Mimik repeatedly attacked Aldo's group. Ashtir stated that if Mimik was allowed to fully merge with Madoka, she will be able to bend space-time completely to her will, and we will never see Madoka or Eden ever again. Though they wanted to stop Mimik, the power difference was too great. But, as Mimik was about to deliver a finishing blow to Aldo's group, suddenly Ogre Rancorum's power is draining. It was all Fina's doing. When Fine was resurrected back in the Sword Hall, she gave Ogre Rancorum the power of Jo, but she sent a piece of her as well. But even though Mimik lost Ogre Rancorum to Aldo's group, Nilia did not return to them. Mimik still intended to deal with Aldo's group. Aldo's group therefore had no choice but to fight her. Although Aldo faltered against her. But Aldo never gives up, even if his opponent is a god and he is merely human. Aldo, now having walked the same path with Ogre Rancorum, raised the golden Ogre Rancorum and used it to successfully defeat Mimik. At last, he was able to separate Nilia and Madoka. But Nilia wasn't breathing. It looks like she used all of her Adaxian energy transforming into Mimik. They might be able to bring her back if we can find some cells from when she was that big monster. But just then, Kronos appeared once more. He revealed the Imperial capital and then his true identity. They shall devour all, the planet, even time itself, and then they will venture on to find our next meal, the Sea of Stars. The true identity of Kronos Emperor was the mineral life from beyond the Sea of Stars, the Crimson Rock, Kronos Sabbath, the Red Meteor, Reborn. Kronos Sabbath abducted Madoka and Eden, taking them to the Imperial capital, which had now become the dimensional fortress of Kronos. Although Aldo's group wanted to pursue Kronos immediately, they couldn't leave Nilia's body behind. At that moment, her body began to disintegrate, but her consciousness had not completely vanished. She felt guilty for thinking she could become a god. If Aldo's group could forgive her, she wanted to travel with them again. because they were her friends. There is so much more she'd like to see, hear, touch. With the energy of Zeno Hades, which was the same life form as Niilus, she was revived and rejoined Aldo's group once more. Having received a second chance from Zeno Hades, she apologized to her friends for becoming a god and attacking them. Though there were some lingering resentments, everyone gave Niilus another chance. And their next destination, their final destination, was the Imperial capital, now fused with a red meteor, a dimensional fortress. They had to go there and confront Kronos Sabbath to prevent everything from being devoured and to rescue Madoka and Eden. Aldo's group headed towards the fortress. On their way to confront Kronos Sabbath, Ashtir encountered an extremely weak AI Madoka, who was unable to go online and was fading away. In her final moments, AI Madoka entrusted Kamlanij to Ashtir's care. Ashtir immediately accepted the request, allowing AI Madoka to pass away peacefully. Then, Sebastia appeared before them. She asked to join Aldo's group. She explained that she knew Kronos before he became Kronos Sabbath. It seemed he had been possessed by the red meteor during his research. Unbeknownst to anyone, she wanted to help Kronos and the Empire. Of course, if Kronos couldn't be saved, she would accept that reality. Aldo's group chose to trust her. And finally, Aldo's group confronted Kronos. Sebastia tried to persuade Kronos to stop listening to those alien voices and come to his senses. But Kronos refused, stating that this was his will. Suddenly, Madoka appeared, declaring that the being before them is not the man she once knew. He is not even human. She pleaded with Aldo's group to free Kronos. And so, the final battle began. Kronos transformed into Kronos Sabbath and clashed fiercely with Aldo's group. The fierce battle has begun. However, even after being blasted away by a fully powered guilty Hades, Kronos Sabbath was not defeated and reappeared. It abducted Madoka and fled from Aldo's group once more. Aldo's group had to pursue Kronos Sabbath for one last confrontation. The fierce battle has begun again.
聖剣に導きの声はなく、され我らを照らす光となる。さあ共に誓いを果たしましょう。この一戦は我らの信念がごとし、貫けぬものはない。
And at that moment, the tree of time regenerated. Guilty Hades became operational again. And it was as if the last vestiges of Kronos' consciousness were pinning Kronos Sabbath's body, preventing it from moving, giving Aldo and Camlanage an opening to free him. At last, the battle between Aldo's group and the Kronos Empire ended. After Sabbath was defeated, the Imperial capital returned to its original state, and the Hollow has been released. The synth Hydras, summoned by Fina and Camlanage's power, returned to their respective dimensions. And finally, Aldo's group escorted Madoka to Zurvan. Madoka thanked Aldo's group and said, "She have decided to give Eden another chance at life. After the Empire is gone, and they no longer have to fear an alien attack, she can finally send him home." As the true Eden, the another Eden we know, to the beginning of everything. But before he left, Gildner encouraged him, saying he wasn't fighting alone. He still had friends to help him. He urged Eden to believe in them, to becoming Soric for a young girl in Baroque, to becoming Kyros for Kronos' family. Before Aldo's group parted ways with Madoka, she gave Aldo a watch, an heirloom passed down through generations of the Kronos family. She herself chose to remain at Zurvan to fulfill her duties. And there you have it, everyone. The absolutely mind-blowing conclusion to Another Eden's Episode 3, Into the Hollow, the Kronos Empire Strike Back. What a ride it's been! From the depths of despair to the heights of cosmic battles, Aldo and his friends have truly been through it all. So many sacrifices, so many revelations, and finally, a sense of peace. Or is it? The journey of Eden, then Soric, now Kyros, is just beginning in a way, and Madoka's vigil at Zavan leaves us with so many thoughts. What did you all think of this epic finale? How will they continue story from this point on? Let me know all your thoughts and theories down in the comments below. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible adventure. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more game stories, movie style. Until next time, take care and keep exploring those amazing worlds.